The bathroom door rattled under my fist like it wanted to break free from its hinges. I could hear water sloshing on the other side, violent and panicked. Then her voice came through the steam, high-pitched, desperate. "Liam, stop! Please, just stop!" My brother's voice followed, trying to sound authoritative, trying to reclaim some shred of control he'd already lost. "Back off, man. Just back off and let us explain." I didn't back off. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. My hand moved to the deadbolt on the outside of that door, the one we'd installed 3 years ago when my nephew kept wandering into rooms he shouldn't. I turned it slowly, deliberately, until it clicked with a sound so final it felt like sealing a tomb. Then I pulled out my phone and made the one call I never thought I'd have to make. When my brother-in-law answered, I kept my voice steady, almost eerily calm. "Jake," I said, "you need to get to my house right now." There was a pause. "Liam, what's going on?" "Just get here," I repeated. 5 minutes. "And bring someone who can witness what I'm about to show you." I hung up before he could ask another question. Behind me, the pounding started again. My brother Jason's fist hammered against the wood. "Open this door, Liam. You're being insane." My wife Rachel's voice joined in, sharper now, anger mixing with her panic. "You can't do this." "Let us out." I stood there in my own hallway, in the house I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time. The signs had been there for months, maybe longer. I just hadn't wanted to see them. But now I was going to make sure everyone else did. Let me take you back to where this nightmare actually began, because what you need to understand is that I'm not some paranoid husband who jumped to conclusions. I'm a 34-year-old construction project manager who believed in trust, in family, in the basic decency of the people you share your life with. And that belief almost cost me everything. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day that makes up most of American life. I'd left the job site early because we'd finished pouring a foundation, ahead of schedule, and my foreman told me to take the rest of the day. It was barely 3 in the afternoon. The sun was still high, the neighborhood quiet with that midweek stillness where everyone's either at work or at school. I'd stopped at the grocery store because they had ribeye steaks on sale, 2 for $12, the kind of small victory that feels significant when you're trying to save for a future. I was thinking about grilling that evening, maybe opening the good whiskey, having a normal Thursday night with my wife. My house sits on Maple Street, one of those tree-lined, suburban roads where people still know their neighbors' names. White picket fences, trimmed lawns, American flags on porches. The kind of place where you're supposed to feel safe, where betrayal seems like something that happens to other people in other neighborhoods. I pulled into my driveway at 3:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I glanced at my truck's clock and thought about how I'd surprise Rachel by being home early. The front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual. Rachel worked from home as a graphic designer, and she often left it open during the day to let the breeze through the screen door. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The living room curtains were drawn, which was strange because Rachel liked natural light for her work. The air felt heavy, humid, and there was a scent I didn't recognize immediately. Perfume, but not Rachel's usual brand. Something sweeter, cheaper. I heard the shower running, water hissing through pipes, echoing down the hallway from our master bathroom. At first, my brain did what brains do when they don't want to accept something terrible. It rationalized. Maybe Rachel was showering. Maybe she'd spilled something and needed to clean up. Maybe the perfume smell was from some new product she was trying. But then I heard laughter. Low, intimate, the kind of laugh that has layers to it. A woman's laugh, and it was definitely Rachel's. But there was something else underneath it. Another voice, deeper, masculine, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop before my conscious mind could identify it. I walked down that hallway like I was moving through water. Each step felt impossible, but I kept going because some part of me needed to know, needed to see. The bathroom door was cracked open maybe 3 inches. Steam curled out into the hallway like a living thing, thick and warm. Light spilled through that narrow gap, and I could hear water splashing, movement, more laughter. My hand touched the door. It was hot from the steam inside. I pushed it open slowly, and the hinges didn't even creak because I'd oiled them just last month. Taking care of my house like a responsible adult who believed his life was stable. The scene that unfolded in front of me will be burned into my memory until the day I die. Our bathtub is one of those old-fashioned clawfoot tubs we'd spent $2,000 restoring when we bought the house. Rachel had called it romantic. We'd joked about bubble baths and champagne. Now my wife was in that tub, and my brother Jason was in there with her. They weren't just sitting. They were tangled together, her back against his chest, his arms around her waist, both of them wet and bare-shouldered, laughing about something I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears. For maybe 3 seconds, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was like looking at an optical illusion that wouldn't resolve into something recognizable. This couldn't be my wife. This couldn't be my brother. This couldn't be my bathroom, my house, my life. Then Rachel's eyes found mine in the mirror. Her smile died so fast it was like watching someone's soul leave their body. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jason turned his head, following her gaze. And when he saw me standing there in the doorway, his face did something I'll never forget. Not shame, not guilt, calculation, pure cold calculation. Like he was already 3 steps ahead. Already planning his defense. Already deciding which lie would work best. "Liam," he started, his voice too casual, too controlled. "Hey man, this isn't—" I didn't let him finish. I stepped back into the hallway and closed that door with a quiet click that felt louder than any slam could have been. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I expected them to shake. I expected rage to flood through me, hot and violent. Instead, I felt cold. Surgically cold, efficient. I heard movement inside the bathroom, frantic now. Rachel's voice rose sharp with panic. Liam, wait!" I didn't wait. I slid the outside latch lock into place. That old-fashioned hook-and-eye lock that we'd laughed about when we installed it. Then I turned the deadbolt we'd added for extra security when my nephew, Tyler, started walking and exploring. Everything. Click. The sound was final, absolute. "What the hell are you doing?" Jason's voice came through the door. Louder now, anger replacing the fake casualness. I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed my phone from the counter, where I'd set it next to those stupid ribeye steaks, and I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Jake, Rachel's brother, my brother-in-law. A good man who'd stood next to me at my wedding and told me I was lucky to marry into their family. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring, voice cheerful and unsuspecting. "Liam, what's up, man? We still on for the game Sunday?" I stared at my wedding ring under the kitchen fluorescent lights. It looked like a lie. Like everything in my house had become a lie. "Jake," I said, my voice low and controlled. "You need to get to my house right now." The cheerfulness evaporated from his tone instantly. "What? Why? What's wrong?" "Your sister is in my bathroom," I said slowly, making sure every word landed. "With my brother Jason, in the bathtub, together." The silence on the other end of the line was so complete. I could hear his breathing change. Could hear the exact moment his world tilted on its axis the same way mine had. "I'm coming," he said, voice hollow. "I'm bringing someone. Don't do anything stupid." "Too late for that," I replied. They already did. When I hung up, the pounding on the bathroom door had intensified. Jason was slamming his fist against the wood now, shouting, "Liam, open this door right now. You're acting crazy. This is ridiculous." Rachel's voice wove through his, higher, more desperate. Please, we need to talk about this. Just let us explain." I walked back to that hallway and stood with my shoulder against the door, listening to them argue inside like trapped animals. "You can't keep us in here," Jason yelled, his voice cracking with something that might have been fear. "This is illegal. This is false imprisonment." I leaned close to the door, close enough that they'd hear me clearly. "You've got about 4 minutes before Jake gets here," I said quietly. "I'd suggest you use that time to figure out what you're going to tell him." Because I'm not saying a word. I'm just going to open this door and let him see exactly what I saw. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Then I heard Jason's voice, lower now, hissing at Rachel. "Get dressed. Get dressed right now. We need to—" "There's no we anymore," Rachel cut him off, her voice breaking. "Oh God, Jason, what are we going to do?" "We're going to explain," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "We're going to tell them it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything." I almost laughed. A mistake, like they'd accidentally fallen into my bathtub together, like months of lying and sneaking and betraying everyone who trusted them could be waved away with the word mistake. Gravel crunched in my driveway. Not one car, but 2. Doors slammed in rapid succession. Footsteps pounded up my porch steps, heavy and urgent. Someone knocked on my front door, hard and fast, not asking permission but demanding entry. I walked away from the bathroom and opened the front door. Jake stood there, his face the color of old concrete, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Next to him was his cousin Marcus, who happened to be a sheriff's deputy, still in uniform from his shift, his eyes sharp and alert. Jake didn't look at me first. His eyes went straight down the hallway toward that closed bathroom door, like he could see through the walls to the truth he didn't want to believe. "Is it locked?" His voice came out rough like he'd swallowed gravel. I nodded. Jake pushed past me without another word. When he reached that bathroom door, he didn't pound on it like Jason had. He leaned close, his voice dropping to something quiet and deadly. "Rachel," he said, "open this door. Right now, the—" Silence inside the bathroom stretched. So long, I wondered if they'd stopped breathing. Then I heard frantic movement, water splashing. Jason's voice hissing instructions. "Get the robe. No, the big one. Just hurry up." Deputy Marcus stepped closer, his hand resting near his radio. His expression neutral but his eyes missing nothing. "Ma'am," he called out, voice professional and firm. "This is Deputy Marcus Reynolds. I need you to open this door." Immediately for everyone's safety, another beat of silence. Then the inside lock clicked. The knob turned slowly. The door cracked open and humid air rolled into the hallway, carrying the scent of body wash and guilt. Jason appeared first, wrapped in my bathrobe, the dark blue one Rachel had bought me for Christmas. His hair was wet, plastered to his forehead, and his eyes were already working on innocence, on victimhood, on anything that might save him. Behind him, Rachel stood clutching my towel around her shoulders. Mascara smudged down her cheeks like she'd been trying to cry on command. Her eyes found mine once, then skittered away like she couldn't bear to look at what she'd destroyed. Jake stared at them both like he was looking at strangers. His sister, who he'd protected their whole lives. His brother-in-law, who'd been welcomed into Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. Both of them wet and half-dressed in another man's bathroom. Jason tried to laugh, but it came out wrong, desperate. "Jake, buddy, listen. This really isn't what it looks like." Jake's voice came out like broken glass. "Tell me what it looks like then. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my sister is in my brother-in-law's bathtub with his brother. And I can't think of a single innocent explanation for that." Rachel's lips trembled. She glanced at me like I was supposed to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. Like I was supposed to be the reasonable one who made this easier for everyone. "It was stupid," she whispered. "It was so stupid, Jake. We just— Stupid?" Jake's voice cracked. "Stupid is forgetting to buy milk. Stupid is missing an exit on the highway. This is a choice. This is months of lying." He turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Grief. Pure, hollow grief for the family he thought he had. "How long?" he asked Rachel, not looking at her. She didn't answer fast enough, so Jason stepped forward, trying to take control of the situation. "Look, everybody needs to calm down. We're all adults here. We can handle this maturely without—" Deputy Marcus's voice cut through like a blade. "Sir, I need you to take 2 steps back and keep your hands visible." Jason's mouth snapped shut. Deputy Marcus had pulled out his phone and was recording, his movements deliberate and professional. He captured the open bathroom door, the steam still lingering in the air, Rachel's smudged makeup, Jason's borrowed robe, the timestamp reading 3:34 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. "I'm documenting what I'm observing," Marcus said calmly, his voice the voice of someone who'd seen people destroy their lives 1,000 times before. "For the record, this is the residence of Liam and Rachel Mitchell. And I'm here at the request of family members due to a reported domestic disturbance." Jason's eyes flicked past us toward the living room, toward the desk where Rachel and I kept our important papers. I saw that glance, that calculating look, and I understood immediately what he was thinking. Documents, bank accounts, assets, what he could grab, what he could hide, what he could salvage from this wreckage. I'd worked construction long enough to recognize when someone was looking for an exit strategy. Jake's voice came out ragged, barely holding together. "How long, Rachel? How long has this been going on?" Rachel's shoulders shook. She was crying harder now, but I couldn't tell if it was real or performance. "Jake, please, how long?" he repeated, and this time it wasn't a question. It was a demand. She looked at Jason, then at the floor. "Since April. April, That was 9 months ago. 9 months of family dinners, where Rachel had sat next to me and smiled across the table at Jason and his wife. 9 months of Jason coming over to watch football, drinking my beer, slapping me on the back like a brother. 9 months of holidays and birthdays, and every day lies so thick I wondered how either of them had breathed under the weight. Something in my chest locked itself away, like my heart had decided to go into protective custody so I could keep standing. April, I repeated, tasting the word. That's when you told me you wanted to redecorate the bathroom. That's when you said we needed to replace the old tub. Rachel flinched like I'd hit her. Jason tried to cut in, his voice dropping into that tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. Liam, listen, we can handle this privately. Just between family. No need for lawyers or courts or any of that mess. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. Jason was 2 years younger than me. The golden boy of our family, the one who could charm anyone into anything. I'd lent him money when his business failed. I'd given him a place to stay when his marriage to Melissa hit rough patches. I'd stood by him through every crisis, every mistake, every bad decision, because that's what brothers do, and he'd repaid me by climbing into my bathtub with my wife. Too late for private, I said. Deputy Marcus shifted his weight, his eyes on Jason. Sir, I'm going to need you to gather some essential belongings and vacate this residence for the evening. The homeowner is requesting you leave. Jason's face hardened. This is my brother's house. I have a right to— You have no rights here, I interrupted, my voice still eerily calm. None. Get out. Jason turned to Rachel, looking for an ally, but she was staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow her. Rachel, he said, tell him we didn't mean for this to happen. Rachel's voice came out small and broken. Just go, Jason, please just go. For the first time, real fear flickered across my brother's face. Not fear of me, but fear of what came next. The police report, the divorce proceedings, the family knowing, the whole careful web of lies unraveling in front of witnesses. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. Melissa's asking where Jason is. She says he told her he was at a job site consultation. Melissa, Jason's wife, my sister-in-law, a woman I'd shared Thanksgiving dinners with, who'd babysit my future kids, who'd trusted Jason the same way I'd trusted Rachel. Another life about to detonate. You need to tell her, I said to Jason. Right now, you need to call Melissa and tell her the truth. Jason's eyes went wide. Liam, come on. Don't do this. We can figure this out without destroying everyone. You already destroyed everyone, Jake said quietly. You did that the second you decided your wants mattered more than your vows. My phone buzzed in my pocket. When I pulled it out, my blood went cold. It was a banking alert, a transfer pending from our joint account. $5,000 moving to an account I didn't recognize. I turned the screen toward Jason. This you? His face gave him away before his mouth could form a lie. His eyes darted to the screen, then away, and that micro-expression told me everything. I don't know what that is, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Deputy Marcus leaned in to look at my phone. That's interesting timing, he said. A large transfer initiated right after you locked this door. I took a screenshot, then another, then opened my banking app and started documenting everything I could see. Account numbers, timestamps, transaction histories, every digital footprint that showed Jason had been planning his escape route even before he'd been caught. You were stealing from me, I said, and the coldness in my voice surprised even me. While you were in there with my wife, you were moving my money. Jason's face flushed red. That's not stealing. That's protecting myself from whatever crazy thing you were going to do. Interesting choice of words. Deputy Marcus noted. Protecting yourself from what exactly? From the consequences of your own actions? The hallway felt like it was closing in. All of us crowded into that narrow space, the truth too big to fit anywhere comfortably. Rachel finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam, I know you're angry. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please, can we talk about this without everyone here? I looked at her, really looked at her, and I tried to find the woman I'd married 7 years ago. The woman who'd laughed at my terrible jokes, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd promised to build a life with me. She was gone. In her place was a stranger who'd turned my home into a crime scene. No, I said simply. We're done talking. You and Jason can talk to your lawyers. Jake pulled out his phone. I'm calling Melissa. She deserves to know. Jason lunged forward like he might try to grab the phone, but Deputy Marcus stepped between them, one hand raised in a warning. Don't, Marcus said quietly. Don't make this worse than it already is. Jason's hands curled into fists, then slowly unclinked, like he was forcing himself back under control. You're all going to regret this, he said, his voice low and venomous. When the dust settles and the lawyers get involved, you're going to realize you overreacted. Rachel and I will get half of everything anyway. That's how no-fault divorce works. That's how the law protects people from vindictive spouses. I smiled then. And it must have looked wrong on my face because Jason actually took a step back. Is that what you think this is about? I asked. Splitting assets? Money? What else would it be about? Jason shot back. You can't punish people for cheating in divorce court. It doesn't work that way. You're right, I said. In most states, adultery doesn't determine asset division. But you know what does matter? Financial misconduct, hiding money, stealing marital funds, changing beneficiaries without consent. And you just tried to move $5,000 while you were wet from my bathtub. Jason's face went pale. Deputy Marcus nodded slowly. He's right. Financial fraud during divorce proceedings can result in severe penalties, reimbursement to the marital estate, attorney fees, even sanctions. I wasn't stealing, Jason insisted, but his voice had lost its edge. That money was for what? I interrupted. For the secret credit card you opened 3 months ago. For the hotel rooms you've been booking? For the jewelry you bought Rachel that, I'm guessing, is hidden somewhere in this house? Rachel's face crumbled. How did you know about the jewelry? I didn't, I admitted. Not until right now. But thank you for confirming it. Jake was on the phone now, his voice tight and controlled as he spoke to Melissa. I could hear her voice on the other end, confused at first, then rising in pitch as Jake explained where her husband actually was, where he'd been for months, what he'd been doing. In my bathtub, with my wife. Jason's face had gone from pale to gray. He was watching his whole life collapse in real time, broadcast through a phone, speaker to the one person he'd managed to keep in the dark. When Jake hung up, his hands were shaking. She's filing tomorrow, he said. She wanted me to tell you, Jason, that you've got 2 hours to get your things out of her house or she's changing the locks. The next hour passed in a blur of cold efficiency. Jason left with a duffel bag and a face full of rage he couldn't quite hide behind wounded pride. Rachel left wrapped in Jake's jacket, still crying, still trying to explain, still not understanding that explanations don't undo betrayal. Deputy Marcus took statements from everyone, his pen moving steadily across his notepad, documenting the end of 2 marriages, with the same professional detachment he probably used for traffic accidents. When they were finally gone and my house was empty again, I stood in my kitchen and looked around at the life I thought I had. The refrigerator was covered in photos from better days. Rachel and me at the Grand Canyon, Jason's birthday party where I'd roasted him affectionately, family Christmas where everyone had been smiling, lying, pretending. I opened my banking app again and started documenting everything I could find. Every suspicious transaction, every unexplained withdrawal, every digital breadcrumb that might matter when lawyers got involved. Then I called a number I'd gotten from a colleague 6 months ago, when his own marriage had imploded. The number for Susan Caldwell, the divorce attorney everyone said was ruthless but fair. She answered on the 3rd ring. Susan Caldwell. Ms. Caldwell, my name is Liam Mitchell. I need a lawyer. My wife has been having an affair with my brother, and I need to make sure I don't lose everything in the divorce. There was a pause. Then her voice came back calm and professional. Can you be in my office tomorrow morning at 9? Yes. Bring everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, property documents, anything that shows joint assets or suspicious activity. And Liam? Yes? Don't touch the joint accounts. Don't empty them. Don't move money. Don't do anything that could be used against you later. Protect your half, but do it legally. Understood. When I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and finally let myself feel something other than cold efficiency. And what I felt wasn't what I expected. It wasn't rage or grief or even betrayal, though all of those were there, simmering underneath. What I felt was a strange crystalline clarity. I'd been living in a house built on lies, and now that it had collapsed, I could finally see the foundation, and I was going to use every piece of that wreckage to build something better. The next morning, I walked into Susan Caldwell's office at 8:57 a.m. The building was old brick, the kind of place that had probably seen 1,000 divorces play out across its worn conference room tables. Susan was exactly what I'd expected. Early 70s, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, reading glasses on a chain, and eyes that had seen every variation of human selfishness and stupidity. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Coffee?" she offered. "Black." She poured 2 cups from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since the Reagan administration, and slid one across her desk to me. "Tell me everything. Start from when you first suspected something was wrong." I told her about Thursday afternoon, about the unlocked door and the perfume smell and the laughter from the bathroom. I told her about locking them in, about calling Jake, about the pending transfer. I showed her my screenshots, my banking alerts, my documentation. Susan listened without interrupting, her pen moving occasionally across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and studied me over her glasses. "You did good," she said. "Most people in your situation react emotionally. They drain accounts, they damage property. They make it easy for the other side to paint them as vindictive. You stayed calm and documented everything. I was raised to think things through," I said. "Even when my world is ending," she smiled grimly. "Your world isn't ending. It feels like it is, but what's actually happening is you're getting clarity, and clarity is powerful." "Can I ask you something?" I said. Susan nodded. "My brother said that because this is a no-fault state, the affair doesn't matter. That Rachel will get half no matter what. Is that true?" Susan tapped her pen against her legal pad. "In terms of asset division, he's mostly right. Adultery doesn't typically affect how assets are split in no-fault divorce states. But your brother made 2 critical mistakes." She pulled up one of my screenshots on her computer. "First, he tried to move marital funds during the crisis. That's called financial misconduct, and courts take it very seriously. Second, from what you've told me about the jewelry and the hotel rooms, he's been using marital assets to fund the affair. That can be grounds for reimbursement to the marital estate. Meaning if we can prove he and Rachel used your joint money to support their relationship, the court can order them to pay it back before assets are divided. And if your brother was involved in helping Rachel hide or move assets, that gets even messier for both of them." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. "What do I do now?" Susan pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing. "First, you open a new checking account in your name only. Your paycheck goes there. You don't touch the joint account except for normal documented bills. Half that money is legally yours. But you don't move it until we file and get temporary orders in place. Second, we file for divorce immediately and request temporary orders. We ask for exclusive use of the home. We ask for a restraining order on marital assets. And we document every penny Rachel or Jason tries to move. Third," Susan looked up at me. "Third, you prepare yourself for the fact that your family is going to pressure you to work it out. Because that's what families do when they're uncomfortable with conflict. You're going to get calls from your mother, from relatives, from mutual friends, all telling you that divorce is extreme and that you should think of the family. What do I tell them? You tell them the truth. That you didn't destroy your marriage. Rachel and Jason did. And that you're not interested in protecting them from the consequences of their choices." That afternoon, my phone started ringing. My mother first, her voice tight with that special kind of disappointment she reserved for when I'd let her down. "Liam, honey, I just heard from Jason. He says there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Kept my voice level. "There's no misunderstanding. Mom, I came home early and found Rachel and Jason in my bathtub together. That's not ambiguous." She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "These things happen, sweetheart. Marriage is hard. People make mistakes. But you don't want to throw away 7 years over one bad decision." "It wasn't one bad decision," I said. "It was 9 months of lying, and I'm not throwing anything away. They already did that. But Jason's your brother. Family is forever." I looked at the photo on my wall. The one from Jason's wedding where he'd asked me to be his best man. Where I'd stood next to him and promised to support him through anything. Family is supposed to mean something, Mom. It's supposed to mean loyalty and trust, not climbing into bed with your brother's wife. Don't be crude, she said sharply. I raised you better than that. You raised me to think family mattered. I shot back. You raised me to believe that blood meant something. But Jason decided that his wants mattered more than our brotherhood. and Rachel decided that her desires mattered more than her vows. So don't tell me I'm the one who's destroying the family. She went quiet. Then her voice softened. What do you want me to do? I want you to stop making excuses for them. I want you to acknowledge that what they did was wrong, and I want you to understand that I'm not the bad guy in this story just because I'm not willing to pretend it didn't happen. When she hung up, I felt hollower than before. But I also felt something else, relief. Relief that I didn't have to carry the weight of other people's comfort anymore. By evening, Rachel had started calling. I didn't answer, but she left voicemails, each one progressively more desperate. Liam, please, we need to talk. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything. But please don't shut me out like this. Liam, Jason said you're going to try to take the house. That's not fair. I've put 7 years into making that place a home. Liam, why aren't you answering? Are you really going to throw away everything we built? We can fix this if you just give me a chance. I deleted each one without listening to the end. Susan had been clear. No contact except through lawyers. Anything I said could be used against me later, twisted into evidence that I was vindictive or cruel or unreasonable. So I said nothing. On Friday morning, Susan filed the divorce petition. By Friday afternoon, Rachel knew. She showed up at my house at 6 p.m., pounding on the door like she had a right to be there. I watched her through the window, her face red and swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked like someone who'd been crying for hours. She probably had been. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Deputy Marcus, who'd given me his card the day before. She's violating the temporary no-contact order, I said. Can you send someone? On my way, he replied. When Marcus arrived in his patrol car, lights off but presence unmistakable, Rachel finally left. But not before she screamed at my closed door one last time. You're going to regret this. You're going to regret being so stubborn and prideful. We could have fixed this quietly. I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the suburban twilight, and I thought about what she'd said. Quietly. That's what everyone wanted. For me to handle my devastation quietly, to absorb my betrayal quietly, to dissolve my marriage quietly so that everyone else could feel comfortable. But quiet wasn't peace. Quiet was just everyone else's preference for how I should grieve. The mediation was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The conference room at the county courthouse felt like the waiting room for hell. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, and the weight of broken promises hanging in the air like humidity. Judge Harold presided, a retired family court judge in his late 70s, who'd probably seen every variation of human stupidity and selfishness play out across this table. Jason showed up in a suit, hairstyled, confident handshake, that same practiced smile he used when he wanted to appear reasonable. Rachel sat next to him, which told me everything about how they decided to play this. United front. Susan had predicted it. They're going to try to control the narrative, she'd told me. They're going to frame this as a mutual mistake, as everyone being at fault, as a complicated situation with no villains. Don't let them, Judge Harold folded his hands on the table. Before we discuss settlement terms, I want to confirm that both parties understand the requirement for full financial disclosure. Mr. Mitchell, you've submitted your financial documents. Yes, Your Honor, I said. Complete tax returns, bank statements, retirement accounts, everything. And Mrs. Mitchell? Rachel glanced at Jason, then nodded. Yes. Susan opened her folder and slid a stack of papers across the table. Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to address some concerns my client has regarding asset dissipation and financial misconduct. Jason's smile thinned slightly. Judge Harold adjusted his glasses. Go ahead. Susan placed a highlighted bank statement in front of the judge. This is a transfer initiated by Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Jason Mitchell on the day of the incident. $5,000 moving from the marital account to an account in Mr. Jason Mitchell's name only. That transfer didn't complete, Jason said quickly, and it was only because I was concerned about Liam's mental state. I was trying to protect assets. Susan didn't blink. Interesting phrasing. Protect assets from the rightful account holder who was responding, defining his wife and brother in his bathtub. She turned another page. Let's talk about the spending patterns over the past 9 months. She placed a detailed spreadsheet in front of Judge Harold. Went after line of charges, organized by date, categorized by type, highlighted in different colors, hotel stays, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, cash withdrawals that lined up perfectly with Rachel's work trips. Judge Harold scanned the sheet, his expression neutral but his finger pausing at certain entries. This jewelry charge, $2,800 at Harrison's Fine Jewelers. Mrs. Mitchell, is this your wedding ring? Rachel's face flushed. No, it was a gift. For whom? Rachel's eyes darted to Jason, then away. It was for a friend's birthday, Susan. Pulled out a receipt with a delivery address, printed clearly at the bottom. According to the jeweler's records, this piece was delivered to Mrs. Mitchell's personal address, a diamond pendant, and based on the timing, it was delivered 2 days after Valentine's Day. The silence in that room could have crushed diamonds. Judge Harold's voice stayed even. Mrs. Mitchell, did you purchase this with marital funds? I didn't think, Rachel started, then stopped. I mean, we have joint accounts. I thought I was allowed to spend from them. You are, Judge Harold said, for normal marital expenses. But using marital funds to buy expensive gifts during an affair can be considered asset dissipation, especially if your husband was unaware. Susan turned another page. There's more. A credit card opened in Mrs. Mitchell's name 3 months ago. Billing address changed to a P.O. box. Current balance, $9,600. Primary charges? Hotels and online transfers to Mr. Jason Mitchell. Rachel's face went white. Jason leaned forward, trying to take control. Look, this is all being blown out of proportion. Rachel and I made mistakes, yes. But we're not criminals. We're human beings who fell in love in a difficult situation. Judge Harold turned his calm, measured gaze on Jason. Mr. Jason Mitchell, you're not party to this divorce proceeding, so I can't compel you to answer questions. But I would like to understand your role in these financial transactions. Jason shifted in his seat. I didn't force Rachel to do anything. She made her own choices, including opening a secret credit card, Susan asked mildly. Including hiding purchases and cash withdrawals? That's between Rachel and Liam, Jason said. I'm just trying to support Rachel through a difficult time by accepting $9,600 of marital funds, Susan replied. That's an interesting kind of support. Judge Harold held up a hand. Let's move to another issue. Mr. Liam Mitchell, you've alleged that attempts were made to change beneficiary designations on your life insurance and retirement accounts. Can you elaborate? I pulled out the documents Susan had helped me gather. 3 weeks before I found them together, I got a notification from my life insurance company. Someone had tried to change my beneficiary from Rachel to Jason's wife, Melissa. The company flagged it as suspicious and sent me a verification request, which you didn't approve, Judge Harold said, which I didn't even know about until the company called me directly to confirm. They said the request came through an online portal, but the IP address didn't match my usual login. Location. Susan leaned forward. Your Honor, we've subpoenaed the IP records. They match Mrs. Mitchell's work computer. Rachel's voice came out small and broken. I was trying to protect Melissa. Jason said if anything happened to Liam, Melissa would be taken care of by making her the beneficiary on my life insurance, I said, my voice rising for the first time. While you were sleeping with her husband? How exactly would that protect her? Judge Harold's expression finally shifted just slightly into something that might have been discussed. Mrs. Mitchell, do you understand how serious these allegations are? Attempted fraud regarding insurance beneficiaries can result in criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Rachel burst into tears, the kind of sobbing that makes your whole body shake. I didn't know what to do. Jason said we needed to be smart about the future. He said if Liam found out, he'd try to destroy both of us financially. I was scared. Jason's face had gone from confident to ashen. That's not what I said. Rachel, don't put words in my mouth. You told me to change the beneficiary. Rachel shot back. You said it would protect us. I said it would protect Melissa, Jason corrected, his voice tight. I was thinking about my wife. Your wife who you were cheating on, Susan said quietly. The room went silent. Judge Harold sat back and removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly while everyone waited. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades watching people destroy themselves with greed and stupidity. Here's what I see, he said. I see a marriage that has broken down completely due to infidelity. That part, unfortunately, doesn't matter much in a no-fault divorce state. But I also see a pattern of financial misconduct that absolutely matters. He looked at Rachel. Mrs. Mitchell, you've used marital funds to support an extramarital affair. You've opened secret credit cards. You've attempted to change beneficiaries without your husband's knowledge or consent. These actions suggest you were planning for a future that involved your husband's assets, but not your husband. He looked at Jason. And you, sir, while not a party to these proceedings, have been an active participant in conduct that could be considered financial fraud. The fact that you share DNA with the wronged party makes this even more disturbing. Jason opened his mouth to protest, but Judge Harold cut him off with a raised hand. I'm recommending the following. Exclusive use of the marital home to Mr. Liam Mitchell during proceedings. A restraining order on all marital assets. No transfers beyond documented household bills. Reimbursement to the marital estate for documented misuse of funds. The total to be calculated by forensic accounting. And Mrs. Mitchell will be responsible for a portion of Mr. Mitchell's attorney fees due to the financial misconduct that necessitated legal intervention. Rachel's lawyer, a young man in an ill-fitting suit who'd been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. Your Honor, these recommendations are incredibly harsh. My client made mistakes. Yes, but she shouldn't be financially destroyed for being human. Judge Harold's eyes were flat and cold. Being human is making a mistake. Opening secret credit cards and attempting to change life insurance beneficiaries while conducting an affair is planning and fraud. There's a difference. He stood up, signaling the mediation was over. You have 2 weeks to accept these terms or we go to court. And I promise you, if we go to court, the scrutiny will be even more intense and the penalties likely more severe. In the hallway afterward, I saw Jason corner Rachel near the vending machines. His voice was low but furious. You weren't supposed to tell them about the beneficiary thing. That makes me look like I was planning something. You were planning something, Rachel hissed back. You told me we'd be together after this was done. You told me we'd start over. I told you a lot of things, Jason said, and the coldness in his voice made Rachel step back. But I didn't tell you to implicate me in insurance fraud. Watch them turn on each other like drowning people fighting over a life preserver, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a hollow recognition that this was always how it was going to end. Susan touched my elbow. Let's get out of here. We've got work to do. Over the next 2 weeks. The forensic accountant Susan hired tore through every financial record Rachel and Jason had touched. The final report was devastating. $9,600 on the secret credit card, another $12,000 in unexplained cash withdrawals that lined up with Rachel's work trips, the jewelry purchase, hotel stays, restaurant bills, even a weekend trip to Napa Valley that Rachel had told me was a solo work conference. Total misuse of marital funds, $28,400. Susan filed an updated petition requesting full reimbursement before asset division. Rachel's lawyer tried to negotiate down, arguing that some of the spending was legitimate, but the documentation was too thorough. Every dollar had a timestamp, a location, a corresponding lie. Rachel accepted Judge Harold's terms 3 days before we would have gone to court. She agreed to reimburse $14,200 to the marital estate. She agreed to take a smaller share of the retirement accounts. She agreed to pay a third of my attorney fees. She agreed to leave the house with only her personal belongings and furniture she'd brought into the marriage. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges for the attempted beneficiary fraud. The day Rachel moved out, Jake helped me change the locks. We didn't talk much, just worked side by side like we'd done 100 times before when life was simpler. When we finished, Jake sat on my porch steps and stared at his truck. Melissa filed for divorce from Jason 2 days ago, he said quietly. He showed up at my mom's house with a suitcase, asking if he could stay there. What did your mom say? Jake smiled grimly. She told him to figure it out like an adult. Said she was tired of cleaning up his messes. And Rachel? Living with our Aunt Linda, working part-time at a coffee shop to save up for her own place. She calls me sometimes, crying, asking if there's any way to fix this. What do you tell her? Jake looked at me, his eyes tired but clear. I tell her that fixing things requires honesty, and that ship sailed 9 months ago when she decided her secrets were more important than her integrity. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where both our marriages had died. You think you'll ever trust anyone again? Jake asked. I thought about that. Really thought about it. I think trust isn't something you give blindly anymore, I said. I think it's something you verify. something you protect, something you're willing to walk away from if it gets violated. That's a hard way to live. It's a realistic way to live, I corrected. I trusted Rachel completely. I trusted Jason because he was family, and they used that trust as a weapon against me. So yeah, I'll trust again someday. But I'll also watch the accounts, review the beneficiaries, and keep my own records. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I'm responsible for my own protection now. Jake nodded slowly. Melissa said something similar. She said she's never signing anything again without reading every word. Said she's opening her own bank account that nobody else has access to. Said she's done taking people's word for things when she can verify the truth herself. Smart woman. Yeah, Jake agreed. She really is. 6 months later, I was sitting at my kitchen table going through the final divorce decree when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Liam Mitchell. A woman's voice said, "Yes? This is Carol Peterson from the State Ethics Board. I'm calling because we received a report regarding your brother, Jason Mitchell, and his business practices." I sat up straighter. What kind of report? Without going into details I'm not authorized to share. It appears Mr. Mitchell has been engaging in financial misconduct with multiple clients, using client funds for personal expenses, creating fraudulent invoices, standard fraud schemes. We're investigating, and your name came up in our preliminary research because of your divorce proceedings. How can I help? We'd like to interview you about your brother's character, his access to your personal information, and any financial irregularities you noticed during your marriage. Would you be willing to meet with us? I thought about Jason, about the smirk he'd worn when he walked out of my house that Thursday night, about how he'd tried to steal from me even while caught in my bathtub with my wife, about how he'd turned Rachel into a co-conspirator in insurance fraud. Yes, I said. I'll meet with you. The investigation took another 8 months. When it concluded, Jason lost his business license, faced criminal charges for fraud, and ended up with 18 months probation and full restitution to his victims. Turns out my bathtub wasn't the first place. Jason had decided rules didn't apply to him. It was just the first time he'd gotten caught with witnesses. Rachel reached out to me once during that time, a long email that arrived at 2 in the morning. She wrote about therapy, about understanding her patterns, about how she'd betrayed herself as much as she'd betrayed me. She wrote about her relationship with Jason, how it had been exciting at first because it was forbidden, but how quickly it had turned toxic when reality set in. She wrote that she'd never forgive herself for what she did, but that she hoped someday I might find peace with it. I read the email twice, then filed it away without responding. Not because I was cruel, but because some conversations don't have answers that make anyone feel better a year after. That Thursday afternoon when my world collapsed, in a cloud of bathtub steam, I stood in my kitchen making coffee, watching the morning sun stream through clean windows. The house felt different now, lighter. I'd repainted the bathroom, replaced the tub with a walk-in shower, changed enough that the space didn't carry ghosts anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from my contractor buddy, Mike. "Hey, we need a new project manager. You interested in the role? Better hours, better pay, actual work-life balance." I stared at the message, thinking about how one Thursday afternoon had destroyed my marriage but somehow opened doors I'd never thought to walk through. "Send me the details," I typed back. That afternoon I met my mom for coffee. We'd been rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, like people learning to trust each other again after a betrayal. "Jason called me last week," she said, stirring her latte. "Asked if I thought you'd ever talk to him again. What did you tell him?" "I told him that forgiveness isn't automatic just because you share blood. I told him you might forgive him someday when you're ready. But that reconciliation requires trust, and trust requires changed behavior over time." "And what did he say?" She smiled sadly. "He said that wasn't fair. That family should forgive family. Of course he did." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, for how you handled this, for staying honest even when it would have been easier to be vindictive, for protecting yourself without destroying your own character in the process." I squeezed back. "You raised me to think things through. I raised you to be decent," she corrected. "You chose to stay decent even when you had every excuse not to be. That's all you." Driving home that evening, I thought about what I'd want to tell other people who might face something similar. People who might come home early one Thursday and find their trust shattered across a bathroom floor. Here's what I learned. Watch your accounts. Not obsessively, not with paranoia, but with attention. If something feels off, it probably is. Document everything before you react. Screenshots, timestamps, statements, witnesses. Evidence matters more than emotions in divorce court. Don't drain accounts or destroy property out of revenge. Protect your share legally. But don't give them ammunition to paint you as the villain. Review your beneficiaries, powers of attorney, and insurance policies regularly. One form can change everything. Get a lawyer immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. Immediately. In crisis, people rarely make good decisions alone. Understand that no-fault divorce means adultery won't determine asset division. But financial misconduct absolutely matters. Use that knowledge. Don't let family pressure you into making their comfort your priority. Your healing matters more than their awkwardness. Document financial patterns. Forensic accounting can uncover things you never noticed during the marriage, except that some people will believe you overreacted, that you should have handled it quietly, that you're destroying the family. Let them believe it. Their comfort is not your responsibility. And finally, trust yourself. If your gut says something is wrong, investigate. If your instinct says someone is lying, don't talk yourself out of it to keep the peace. It's been 2 years now since that. Thursday afternoon. I'm in a new relationship with a woman named Sarah, who's a financial analyst, and laughs when I tell her I check our bank accounts weekly. Good, she says. So do I. After my ex cleaned out our savings account and disappeared, I promised myself I'd never be that trusting. Again, we've built something. Together that's based on transparency, on verified trust, on the understanding that love doesn't mean blind faith. It means choosing every day to be honest, to be present, to protect what we're building together. I drove past Jason last month. He was coming out of a gas station, looking older than his years, carrying coffee and a newspaper. Our eyes met through my truck window. I lifted my hand in a brief wave, not friendly but acknowledging. He didn't wave back, just turned and walked to his car. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. I don't know if I want one, but I know I don't carry anger for him anymore. What I carry is knowledge. Knowledge of what people are capable of when they prioritize their wants over their values. Knowledge of how to protect myself. Knowledge that surviving betrayal doesn't mean becoming bitter. Sometimes I think about Rachel too. Wonder if she found the peace she wrote about in that email. Wonder if she learned the lessons she needed to learn. But mostly I don't think about her at all. Because here's the final truth nobody tells you about betrayal. Eventually, if you do the work and protect yourself and refuse to let other people's choices define your character, the people who hurt you become footnotes in your story instead of the whole narrative. My story isn't about the bathtub anymore. It's about what I built after. It's about the career I've grown, the relationship I've nurtured, the self-respect I've maintained. It's about choosing truth over comfort, documentation over emotion, and verified trust over blind faith. And if you're reading this because you came home early one day and found your own version of my Thursday afternoon, here's what I want you to know. You will survive this. You will rebuild. You will learn to trust again, but smarter, better, with eyes wide open. Document everything. Get a lawyer. Protect yourself legally. Don't let anyone convince you that your pain should be quiet for their convenience. And remember, the people who betray you are counting on you to protect them from consequences. Don't do it. Let the truth stand on its own. Let the evidence speak. And let the people who made the choices carry the weight of them. That's not revenge. That's just reality finally catching up. And sometimes reality is the best revenge of all.